Barney Miller premiered on ABC 50 years ago, and what lingers now is something between comedic craft and mortality's arithmetic. Of the show's core cast of 9 principal characters, 7 have died and 2 remain, Hal Linden at 94 and Max Gail at 82. The gap between the oldest member of the cast and the youngest at the show's start was 27 years, and by the time Barney Miller ended, that span had acquired a different kind of weight entirely. Before we get to one of the strangest professional farewells in television history, one that involves an actual death occurring during the show's final season, let's sit down and meet the precinct that gave something to the craft of comedy that hasn't quite been replicated since. Number 1, we have Hal Linden as Captain Barney Miller, the fulcrum around which everything else balanced. He was not the funniest man in the room, but he was the one who made room for others to be funny, and that became its own kind of authority. Start anywhere and you land on Hal Linden's presence, the straight man as container, the man who could watch pure chaos unfold across his desk and respond with a cigarette and a small headshake. Barney Miller gave him that role, a captain who was simultaneously a father, a referee, and a reluctant straight man to the city's entire broken machinery. He'd been working steadily before the show, stage work primarily, and television had never quite figured out where to place him. He was too authentic for the glossy comedy slots, too grounded for the dramatic weight-bearing roles. Barney Miller recognized something specific in him, the ability to hold a show together through pure listening. Hidden truth. Linden has spent decades declining the celebrity offers that came after the show, the movie parts, and the guest star circuit that other cast members chased. He chose instead to work almost exclusively in theater, in roles that would never make him more famous. He is still alive, still working, well into his 90s, having done small roles as recently as 2018 in The Samuel Project. Private life. Married to Frances Martin for 52 years, from 1958 until her death in 2010. 3 children. A life of such deliberate quietness that it barely registers on the cultural noise. Hal Linden never became a famous actor. He became an actor, and the distinction has held all his life. Number 2, we have Max Gail as Detective Stan Wojo Wojciechowicz, the hothead with the good heart, the man who burned bright without burning out. He has survived the longest, and perhaps that fact tells us something. Reactivation. Max Gail was born the year after the war ended, and when Barney Miller started, he was 32 years old, young enough to make the physical comedy work, old enough to understand what he was doing with it. Then Anchor. Before the show, he was exactly what he looked like, a character actor, the kind of person in the background of 100 television shows, accumulating experience without recognition. Barney Miller made him recognizable, made him the one that people quoted, the lovable hothead who got things wrong in the best way possible. The gap. After the show ended, he didn't follow the same trajectory as his castmates. He didn't pursue the movie career or the prestige work. He kept working, steady, consistent, unglamorous. Now reveal. As of 2026, Gail is still alive, 82 years old, and has been an environmental activist and political organizer for decades, the work he seems to care about more than acting itself. Private life. Never the celebrity that the other cast members became or tried to become. His life has been remarkably private. Hidden truth. His post-show career included a 10-year run on General Hospital as Mike Corbin, 2018 to 2021. Late career visibility he apparently accepted without enthusiasm. Some people survive not because they are famous, but because they know what not to want. Number 3, we have Abe Vigoda as Detective Phil Fish, the weary elder, the man so deadpan that for decades the internet couldn't quite confirm whether he actually was. He was the best example of Barney Miller's strangest gift, making age itself into comedy. Reactivation. Abe Vigoda was born in 1921, and by the time Barney Miller started in 1975, he was 54 years old, carrying in his face and posture the entire American experience of being tired. Then Anchor. He'd been working for decades before this. Character work in films and television, never the lead, never the obvious choice. But Barney Miller saw in him something specific, a man whose slowness and weariness could become comic, whose physical exhaustion was itself a kind of truth. The Barney Miller writing was smart enough to not mock the exhaustion. It was smart enough to admire it. Hidden truth. Abe Vigoda became famous for being dead. For nearly 3 decades after the show ended, the internet circulated false reports of his death with such consistency that he became, in a strange way, famous for surviving. He did interviews about it. He made peace with it. Now, reveal. Vigoda died on January 26, 2016, at 94 years old from natural causes. He had married Beatrice Shai in 1968, and they remained married until her death. One daughter. Private life. The show gave him a spin-off, Fish, which ran from 1977 to 1978. It was less successful than The Parent Show, and The Parent Show continued without him when it ended. Abe Vigoda is dead now, but he spent the last 30 years of his life proving that deadpan comedy is a form of immortality. Number 4. We have Jack Sue as Detective Nick Yamana, the one who told the jokes that shouldn't have landed but did, who understood the particular comedy of exhaustion and dark observation. His story is the one we withheld, and now we need to tell it. Reactivation. Jack Sue was born Goro Suzuki in 1917, which meant he was 58 years old when Barney Miller started, older than Vigoda, carrying his own particular gravity. Death notice first. He died on January 11, 1979, during the show's 6th season, from esophageal cancer, 59 years old. He was, in simple fact, the first main cast member to die while the show was still on the air. Then anchor. Before Barney Miller, before Jack Sue the actor, there was Goro Suzuki, interned during World War II in an American concentration camp, the kind of detail that rarely appears in celebrity profiles because it was rarely asked about. He survived that. He became an actor. He worked steadily. Barney Miller made him a specific kind of visible, the sophisticated observer, the man who could watch the room and offer commentary that was both kind and cutting at once. Post-show career and private life, married to Jan Sue. They had a life together. The spin-off Fish that started a year after Barney Miller in 1977 meant Vigoda left. Jack Sue didn't. He stayed. Hidden truth. The show did not do an episode of mourning called Goodbye, Mr. Fish. It did something harder. After Sue died, they aired an episode called Obituary, and then did a tribute segment, continuing the show's rhythm even as the rhythm itself had broken. Jack Sue spent his life telling jokes to escape a country that had tried to erase him. He died before 50 was anything but a number he'd already passed. Number 5, we have Ron Glass as Detective Ron Harris, the sophisticated one, the man with the suit and the style, who understood that comedy could come from being too good for your surroundings. Reactivation. Ron Glass was born in 1945, making him 30 years old when Barney Miller started, young enough to carry the physical comedy of a character who primped and preened in a precinct that didn't understand him. Then anchor. Before the show, he was a journeyman, guest spots, small roles, the kind of career that was building slowly without a clear direction. Barney Miller gave him shape. Ron Harris was a character you could love specifically because he was slightly ridiculous and entirely aware of it. Now, reveal first. Ron Glass died on November 25, 2016, at 71 years old, from respiratory failure. Career trajectory. After Barney Miller, he continued to work steadily, and in the 2000s he found a second iconic role, playing Shepard Book in Joss Whedon's Firefly and its film continuation Serenity, a character that became deeply important to a new audience decades after the show that made him famous. Later, he appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Private life. Ron Glass was remarkably private about his personal life and was never publicly married. He kept that space for himself, which was his right, and which means very little is known about the interior of his life. Hidden truth. He was as careful about his own mythology as he was about Ron Harris's carefully managed appearance. Legacy close. The simple truth. Some actors give you their work and nothing else, and that is enough. Number 6. We have Steve Landesberg as Detective Arthur Dietrich the Intellectual, the man who quoted philosophers and understood systems in ways that other detectives couldn't quite reach. He was the show's recurring reminder that intelligence could coexist with absurdity. Reactivation. Steve Landesberg was born in 1936, making him 39 when the show started. Old enough to have worked steadily in comedy and character work, young enough to carry the particular energy of a man explaining the world to people who didn't want to hear about it. Then Anchor. He'd been a stand-up comedian before television work found him, and that background shaped the way he delivered observation. He wasn't a character actor in the mold of Vigoda or Sue. He was a comic who understood that the best jokes happened when you let the audience think they were disagreeing with you. Barney Miller recognized that and gave him Dietrich, a role that let him be the smartest person in the room and still lose every argument. Hidden truth. After Barney Miller, Landesberg continued to work, including voice acting work that gave him a kind of extended visibility without the pressure of being recognized on the street. Now, reveal. Steve Landesberg died on December 20th, 2010, at 74 years old from colon cancer. He had continued working in comedy and character roles throughout his life after the show ended, maintaining a quiet career in a way that mirrored Max Gail's trajectory. Private life. Very little is publicly known about his personal life, which was, it seems, deliberately managed that way. Legacy close. The weight. Some people spend their whole lives carrying intelligence around in a room full of people who will never understand it, and they do it with such grace that you don't realize until they're gone how much that costs them. Number 7. We have Ron Carey as Officer Carl Levitt, the desk officer, the overlooked uniform who somehow became the emotional center of an entire show by simply listening. He was the person everyone forgot until the moment they needed him. Reactivation. Ron Carey was born in 1935, making him 40 when Barney Miller premiered, already seasoned in character work and bit roles before the show ever aired. Then, Anchor. Before Barney Miller, he was exactly what Carl Levitt represented, a working actor, employed regularly but not famous, capable and professional and utterly invisible. The show took that invisibility and made it into something resonant, made it into a kind of depth that other shows were too busy to recognize. Now reveal first. Ron Carey died on January 16, 2007, at 71 years old, from a stroke. Post-show career. After Barney Miller, he worked with Mel Brooks on multiple projects, History of the World Part 1, and other collaborations that gave his career a certain shape and visibility. He was a working actor in a town where working is the most anyone can ask for. Private life. Like so many of the cast, his personal life was kept deliberately private, and most of what is known is the basic biography that actors are required to share. Hidden truth. He spent decades playing the overlooked person, and he seems to have approached his actual life with the same understated presence. Legacy close. The correction. Carl Levitt was never the lead, never the obvious choice, and that made him the only person anyone trusted. Number 8. We have James Gregory as Inspector Frank Luger, the old-school boss, the man who represented every authority the show was gently mocking. He was the necessary obstacle, the inevitable antagonist, and absolutely essential to the show's particular rhythm. Reactivation. James Gregory was born in 1911, making him 64 when Barney Miller started, the oldest cast member by a significant margin. He brought to the role an entire career's worth of gravitas. Then Anchor. Gregory had been working in film and television for decades before Barney Miller, a character actor with a presence that suggested the weight of institutions and bureaucracy. Now reveal first. James Gregory died on September 16, 2002, at 90 years old from natural causes. He had lived nearly a century, had watched television develop entirely, had been a part of multiple generations of entertainment. Career trajectory. Before Barney Miller, he'd been part of countless films and television shows, the kind of working actor who accumulates a filmography that nobody quite notices. The show gave him a role that people did notice, that became iconic in a quiet way. Private life. His life followed the pattern of that generation, a long career, professional accomplishments, a life devoted to the work. Hidden truth. He represented in the show the thing he actually was in life: the institutional authority, the old guard, the man whose time was ending. Legacy close. The quiet return. Some actors spend their entire careers building toward the moment when their exhaustion becomes the performance. Number 9, we have Florence Stanley as Bernice Fish, Phil Fish's wife, appearing in early episodes, the voice of domestic exasperation that balanced the precinct's chaos with something like home life. Reactivation. Florence Stanley was born in 1924, making her 51 when the show started, bringing to the role a particular kind of New York exhaustion. Then Anchor. Before Barney Miller, she'd worked steadily in film and television, a character actress who understood the particular comedy of being married to someone you'd given up explaining yourself to. Now reveal first. Florence Stanley died on October 3, 2003, at 79 years old, from a stroke. Career trajectory. After Barney Miller, she continued to work in television and film, accumulating a steady presence in a career that was deliberately understated. Private life. Married to someone with a television career, which came with its own particular complications and compromises. Hidden truth. She played the wife of a character defined by weariness, and she brought to that role a particular kind of knowing that suggested the interior life of the show itself. Legacy close. The correction. Behind every tired detective was someone who'd been waiting at home, and she was the one who made that waiting visible. Number 10. We have Linda Lavin, who appeared in early episodes as a character, briefly before she moved on to her own show, Alice, where she would become far more famous and visible than Barney Miller had made her. Reactivation. Linda Lavin came into Barney Miller in its early episodes and left as soon as it became clear that the show's strength lay elsewhere. Then Anchor. Before and after Barney Miller, she was building something like a serious career, doing the work of a character actress who understood that visibility could come from multiple places. Barney Miller was not the only show in her life, and perhaps because of that, she was able to recognize when to move on. Now reveal first. Linda Lavin is still alive. She is 80 years old in 2026. Career trajectory. Alice gave her something like primary visibility, made her the center of a show, something that Barney Miller never quite offered anyone but Linden. She worked steadily throughout her career, did the work that comes when you're professional and capable and willing to show up. Private life. Married to Mark Grapey from 2011 onward. She has maintained her work and her life with a kind of deliberate balance. Hidden truth. She was wise to leave early, to recognize that Barney Miller had its own center and that center didn't have room for other centers. Legacy close. The persistence. Some people are smart enough to know when they are in the wrong show, and they have the courage to leave. Between 1975 and 1982, Barney Miller told the story of a precinct in New York, which is to say it told the story of a place where nothing was resolved and everything was accepted. 7 of the core cast members have died now. 2 of them are still here, still alive, still carrying with them the simple fact of having been there when the show was made. What lingers is not sentiment. What lingers is the particular way that the show understood something about the work of patience, about the comedy that comes from watching a broken system and choosing not to fix it, but to inhabit it with grace. The show ended after 8 seasons, and by the time it ended, Jack Sue was already gone, and the precinct itself had become a kind of tribute to its own duration. That might be the strangest legacy of all. A comedy about a place that never resolved itself because that's not what places do. They just keep going until the people in them stop going, and then they stop too.